Welcome back to the Garden with Joy and Holly radio show. Moments away, garden professor Linda Chalker-Scott. But first, Rise Gardens, Holly.
Rise Gardens is a revolutionary hydroponic gardening system for your home. Instead of food traveling hundreds or even thousands of miles before it hits your plate, harvest the veggies, herbs, and greens you need for dinner tonight in the comfort of your home. No green thumb required knowledge. Gardening made easy with the Rise Gardens app, step-by-step guidance from seed to harvest. A complete garden on a shelf and comes with everything you need to grow healthy and the freshest food for you and your loved ones. Fully customize your garden to your needs and preferences. For more information and get your Rise Garden, visit risegardens.com.
Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Linda Chalker-Scott is a professor and urban horticulturist. She runs the Garden Professor's blog as well as hosts the Inform Gardeners podcast. Welcome to the program, Linda.
Well, thank you, Holly and Jody. I'm enjoying being here.
Well, we thank you for taking time out of your day, and not only to educate Holly and myself, but all of our listeners. And I'll start with this question for you. Many people might know what a horticulturist is, but maybe not an urban horticulturist. Can you explain or tell us more about what you do?
Sure. Well, a lot of my colleagues work on crop plants. I don't. I work on ornamentals, and plants are used in home gardens, and that's what really kind of focuses urban. It doesn't necessarily mean a city. It just means not focusing on crop production.
Okay.
So anybody who has a garden or landscape, that's what I focus on, and as well as public parks and arboreta and things like that.
So you're the person that tells the landscapers don't put the mulch up next to the bark of the tree.
Yes, if I catch them doing that, I will say something.
Oh, you wouldn't believe how many professional landscapers, and you've seen them in your area, where they are like, "Oh yeah, this is how you do it." That's not how you do it.
Yep. It's there's a lot of lore out there, and so my mission is to spread the science.
People don't like when you tell them that they're wrong when it comes to gardening stuff.
No, they do not. A lot of people, though, do really want to know the good science,
Correct.
And so that's what I really focus on. But yeah, there is pushback. You're right.
Like I've told Holly, out of the population, you're looking at 8 to 10% of people that are just certified jerks. It doesn't matter what you do; they're just angry all the time. So.
And gardening is like the opposite of being angry.
Well, true.
People should just garden more.
True.
I couldn't agree more. So your blog recently talked about sheet mulch. We love mulch. Can you tell us more about sheet mulching and the benefits and what it is and all that good stuff?
Okay. Well, just to clarify, what I consider sheet mulch is anything that's a two-dimensional mulch. So this could be fabric or plastic or cardboard or newspaper, something that is two dimensions. And in contrast to that, I always recommend using chunky mulches or three-dimensional mulches, things like wood chips, or if people didn't want organic, you could do stone or something like that. But that's kind of the difference. And the main reason that the difference is important is because that structure is what determines how easily water and oxygen can get into the soil.
Right. And people, we get the question, well, can I just use landscaping fabric? Well, the porous is the object word here, because if it's not porous enough, you're going to have a bunch of dead plants.
Well, and the funny thing is that after about 30 seconds out on the soil, it's not going to be porous at all.
Yeah.
Because what happens is all those pores get filled up with soil, and then it's just like plastic at that point.
And natural is much, much nicer, and it is designed to be porous.
Exactly.
So with that being said, do you have a preference for mulch that you like to use and is kind of universal?
I do, and it isn't. I'll back this up by saying that it's not possibly the best choice depending on where you live. For instance, if you're in a desert environment where you've got plants that are adapted to very dry conditions, my choice isn't going to be the best. But if you're growing trees and shrubs, which even people in desert environments want trees and shrubs, the best thing to use is an arborist chip mulch. And so it's that chipped up wood that comes out of the chipper when arborist comes to take some branches off or take down a tree or whatever. And that is absolutely the best mulch you can use.
All right. Well, many vegetables can be interchanged between planting from starts or by seed. What are some reasons why one might be better than the other?
And that's a really good topical question right now. I just finished buying some plants and seeds. So for my vegetable garden, I because I'm in kind of a cooler part of the country, I always buy tomatoes, for instance, as starts. It just takes too long to get them to the producing size in our relatively cool climate. And so just getting starts means I get some tomatoes before the freezes come. So that's part of it, is that you're going to have something that's especially for vegetables, it's going to be productive faster. On the other hand, seeds are cheaper, and you can kind of play around if you happen to like trying to hybridize your own vegetables and see what you get from the seeds. So, I mean, they both have benefits, and it just kind of depends on, I guess, what your end product wants. You want that end product to be. So if you're looking for lots of tomatoes, I absolutely would recommend starting with starts as opposed to seeds.
And Holly and I have been doing this professionally for a number of years now, and we continue to see people start carrots from seed indoors, start radishes from seed indoors, or buy them from the garden center. And these garden centers have them available because it's a dollar sign. Regardless of the success value, it's a dollar sign, which is very aggravating.
Yeah.
Because they are setting you up for failure. Yeah, 9 out of the 10's not going to make it, so you're going to come back and buy more.
Yes. And that is, unfortunately, the way, as you say, it's a dollar sign figure, and gardening is incredibly popular and got even more so during the pandemic. So, yeah, it's something that people can see as being something to lure you in the store, and hopefully you'll buy lots and then you'll come back after things have failed.
Definitely. So if it's still spring and chilly in many areas of the country, unfortunately still, what are some spring pruning tips, and what should be pruned right now?
Well, the nice thing is that plants don't require pruning. So we prune because we want to. We have goals, or we never are pruning for plant health. And that's the good part, because that means you can make all kinds of decisions based on what, again, your endpoint goals are. So for instance, I'm looking out my window right now, and we just finally got a couple days of over 70-degree weather last week. So I'm looking at my hydrangeas, which I still need to deadhead. And I'm looking at some apple trees that I didn't quite get around to getting all pruned up. And I'll probably just go out there and clean it up as I have time. So it really depends on, it's aesthetics a lot of the time. Sometimes it's pruning for a view. Sometimes it's pruning because you want a formal design. I mean, there's all kinds of things to do. But as long as the temperatures aren't going to get below 40, you're fine to prune now. The problem is if you get between that, everyone knows not to prune if it's going to freeze, but once you get below 40, you can start causing some chilling damage to things that have been recently pruned.
Right. For professional, if someone is newly constructed home or established raw land, what are some plants, shrubs that are foolproof that you can just throw in and really feel like, hey, I'm not going to kill this?
Well, you could always go with some things that tend to be fairly aggressive, things like poplars and willows, things that are pretty fast growing, establish roots quickly, but those aren't really very ornamental. And rather than that, what I suggest to people is when they've got, that crappy soil left from construction, is that just kind of be patient initially. Best thing to do is to top dress that soil with a nice thick coat of wood chips. And the wood chips are going to make the soil more friable, improve its tilth, and in the meantime, you can go buy some plants, really anything you'd like, and within a few weeks, that soil is going to be loosened up enough so that you can go ahead and plant things. And then you just leave that wood chip mulch on there. It improves the soil very quickly, as opposed to just leaving it bare to the elements, especially when it's a really poor soil to begin with.
Would you recommend adding fertilizer or some type of supplement in that hole with that bad soil that the mulch is now trying to improve, or just put it in the ground and let nature take its course?
The other thing that's a good point. The other thing you can do is at the same time do a soil test, because I never recommend adding any fertilizer except probably nitrogen without a soil test. There's just too many instances where you've got excess nutrients, and when you add more fertilizer, you just make the problem worse. The easiest thing to do is just dig the hole, get the plants loosened up out of their root ball. What goes in the hole is what came out of it, the soil, and then the plant roots, mulch and water. And mulch and water are probably the two biggest miracle products in gardening.
And you've seen it, and we've seen it, where people plant trees incorrectly. They go, well, the tree, I'm going to put it all good compost in around the root ball because that means the tree is going to have all the nutrients it needs, and that actually is the detriment to trees by not letting the native soil be around the roots and let it do its natural thing.
That's absolutely right. And so we have to remember that our goal for planting trees or shrubs is to get the roots in touch with the native soil as quickly as possible. And the more barriers you have between the roots and the native soil, the harder it is for the plant to get established. So leaving bulb and burlap things intact in a ball with the burlap and the twine and possibly even a wire basket, those just make it that much harder for the trees to get established if they ever do.
Right. The tree gets choked out and suffocates.
Well, and the roots just can't get out. Right. And so they circle around and then the tree outgrows its root system and
falls on your house.
Yep. That's not a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. Trees falling in your house are something you probably want to avoid.
Absolutely.
So do you, taking things from a scientific perspective, do you have a garden myth that is like just a cringe to you, or your favorite garden myth, or you're like, I don't want to talk about this garden myth anymore, anything like that?
I have to say, and this is based on the blog and our Facebook group and just what comes up the most often in terms of being something that's really contentious. And I have to say it's cardboard mulch and lasagna gardening. That is just something that will not die in terms of people just really believing that's the best way to prepare soil and plant things. And I try to tell people, okay, well, the cardboard and lasagna mulch aside, let's just think one sheet of newspaper that's wet that you put across your face. How easily can you breathe through that one sheet of wet newspaper?
Right.
And then multiply that by cardboard and compost, and this all layered on top of a living soil, and you're just causing all kinds of problems for the things that live in that soil, from beneficial microbes to earthworms to plant roots. So that's probably my biggest gripe, is this persistence on using cardboard and lasagna gardening.
We get the pine needles make your soil acidic. That's what we're going to use. Pine needles. Don't use pine needles. They'll ruin your soil. We get that one over and over again as well.
So I have to tell you, a funny one. My friend was helping in her HOA. They were planting tomato plants, and whoever was leading this said to put a whole entire egg in the planting hole at the time of planting with the tomato.
Put the tomato on top of it.
And I guess she asked this person, she's like, shouldn't we crunch it up? They're like, no, you just put the whole egg in there. And I hope wherever these plants are, nobody is too close to them, because...
Oh, maybe you want them to be real close to somebody.
Because she lives in North Carolina or something. Oh. And I'm sure after a few days, it probably did not smell pretty near the plants.
Oh, I imagine. Or something's going to dig it up and eat it.
Yeah. Well, Linda, we greatly appreciate the time you've offered. How can people find your blog, find your books? How can we navigate the World Wide Web and get a hold of you?
Easiest way is one of two things. If you Google garden professors and do that in quotation marks, so it's one phrase, garden professors, you can find our blog, and you can also find the Facebook group and page. And the other way to find, for instance, my podcasts and other things that I've developed over the last couple decades is to Google The Informed Gardener. Again, all one phrase, and you'll go right to my university page that has all of my white papers and other things.
Well, Linda, thank you very much for your time and the knowledge that you've shared with all of us, to getting us back to gardening the correct way.
You bet. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.